great Scott!
Are you a sports fan who loves to have a good laugh?
Oh, yeah!
Then you're in the right place.
I'm gonna make him an offer again.
Life moves pretty fast.
Patriots win the
Welcome
Super Bowl!
to the Man Cave Chronicles.
Brady has his fifth!
Welcome to another episode of the Man Cave Chronicles podcast, a podcast of talk culture where everyone has a story. I'm your host, Elias, and you can find me on Twitter at the MCC Podcast. My guest this week, you have seen her in Black Sails, Smallville, Another Cinderella Story, and now as the Flash's newest speedster, Nora West Allen, XS, Jessica Parker Kennedy. Jessica, welcome to the cave.
Thank you for having me.
What's going on with you these days?
Just back and forth from LA and Vancouver. I kind of shoot Monday through Friday for 14 hours a day, and then I get on a plane on Saturday morning and come back to LA, and then get on another plane Sunday night and go back to Vancouver.
Do you sleep at all? Jeez.
No, not really. Not really.
So, huge news that you have been casted now as a regular for this season of Flash. But before we start talking about that, I want the listeners to get a little bit more about you. Where are you originally from?
I grew up in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, Prairie Town. So I'm very Canadian, but I currently hold my green card to the United States of America, and I just bought a house here, so I'm very much living in the United States.
Yeah, but you do go back and forth a lot, I assume.
Yeah, just because we shoot The Flash in Vancouver, so I have to go back a lot.
Growing up, what were you into as a kid? What did you enjoy?
Well, I lived, I'm so old now. I lived, during a time when, your parents could just be at 8 o'clock in the morning, you'd go out on your bike and you'd ride off, and then, you wouldn't come back until dinner time. So I spent a lot of time in the community that I lived in just riding around on my bike, and I was very much in my head when I was a kid. So I had a lot of sort of wild fantasies happening and daydreaming. So, I spent a lot of time on my bike, and I watched way too much television, and always just kind of, I think that's probably a big reason why I wanted to become an actor when I was older.
Yeah. Well, what were some of your favorite TV shows growing up, or movies?
Oh man. As a little kid, I was like Rescue Rangers and Darkwing Duck. Oh my God, there's so many. I used to watch a show called The Raccoons, Today's Special. There's probably I watched a bunch of ridiculous Canadian kid shows that no Americans have any idea what they are either.
Yeah. So, did you attend college after going through high school and everything?
Yeah, I begged my mom to quit her job and pull me out of high school so that we could move to Los Angeles so that I could, work my way to becoming a famous movie star at 16.
Yeah.
She refused, and she's like, look, if you want to be an actor, why don't you take it in college? So I went to a program that unfortunately, due to budget cuts, doesn't exist anymore in Calgary called the it was at Mount Royal College, and it was a really amazing 2-year acting program, actually, that was very theater-based. But yeah, like I said, it doesn't exist anymore, which is a real bummer because it's a really cool program. Yeah. It was.
Well, so what made you pursue to get into acting? Obviously you said you were into TV and movies, but
Yeah, my mom took me to a lot of theater when I was little because she really liked theater. And I loved it too. And then when I was 12, Baz Luhrmann's Romeo and Juliet came out, and that just that movie changed everything because it's so visually stimulating. I think it's Baz Luhrmann's best movie, and he's never really made another one quite as special as that. And I don't know, I just was obsessed with it. It was great because it got me onto Shakespeare, and it got me onto film at the same time. So it sort of, I had that balance of I want to learn theater because I want to do Shakespeare, but I also want to be a part of, film and television as well. So that was a big turning point for me when I was 12.
Do you remember your first audition, and what was it for, and how did it go?
I honestly do not remember my first audition, which is bizarre. I should remember it. I know when I eventually moved to Vancouver, and I remember my very first audition, I accidentally didn't read what the dress code was, and it was for a commercial, and we were supposed to be camping. And I remember when I got there, everyone was in hiking boots and jeans and plaid, and I wore really tight black pants and high heels and this little tank top. I looked like such an idiot. And I remember walking in the room and being like, this is my first audition. And they were pretty nice about it. But except for the fact that I obviously did not do my research. I was so nervous about looking nice that I dressed completely wrong for my audition. But yeah, it took me a while to like figure out how to audition properly and what that process was like. And, you know, now we have to do it all the time, or I have to do it all the time. And it's still hard. Not like auditioning for me anyways, has never been something that like has just come naturally to me. I find the whole process just super awkward.
Yeah. Do you what do you enjoy doing better, auditioning in front of people or doing it from like, you know, now you could do it from home pretty much on your iPhone?
I prefer to audition in front of people because I'm more nervous, and I'm someone that, like, if I have nerves, I tend to perform better. Also, I think when you're doing it at home, like, I feel like all actors for the most part are like really particular. I mean, I have friends that aren't as much because they've been, you know, in the biz for so long. But for me, like, if I put an audition on tape at home, I like am like, and now take 20, take 30, you know, it's like half a day, all day process. Whereas, you know, when you go in person, it's like you have 10 minutes and then you get kicked out. So I think, yeah, overall, just I prefer in person. And also that usually you have an opportunity to like meet or sometimes you have an opportunity to meet the director, meet the producers. And I just think it's always better for them to meet you in person. It's more memorable.
Yeah. Plus, I feel like when you audition with somebody that you're going to work with, sometimes you can have the perfect chemistry in front of him or her.
Totally, yeah, totally. So unfortunately, like, I haven't had that many opportunities to do chemistry reads and that sort of stuff. Usually you just, you know, you get cast sort of separately from everyone, and then you all end up together. But it's really, really nice when you have an opportunity to read with someone that's already cast in something. So yeah, I wish that happened more.
So now you've done a few projects for CW, and you know, even you were on Smallville a few years ago for a few episodes. How was it being on Smallville?
Smallville was great. Smallville kind of like led the way for superhero television in a lot of ways, you know. I mean, that show was on for like, I think 10 years or something. That was really fun. I did 3 different episodes over 3 different seasons, and it was very late on the show, so they were like, it was such a well-oiled machine. I mean, it was really extraordinary, and Tom Welling is such like a cool, sweet, lovely, funny, ridiculous person, and we had such a good time. And I was so green back then. It was a really nice place to learn because it was big budget, it had a lot of money, or I mean, not a lot of money, it's CW, but they're pretty, you know, big budget compared to stuff I had done. And so it was just a really, really nice place to learn because it was a really organized environment.
So you first appeared on Arrowverse crossover episode Crisis in Earth X in the Supergirl episode. What was that experience like?
Yeah, it was a shit show. I mean, there were like 3 different green rooms and 30 different cast chairs. You know, going into hair and makeup in the morning was one of the most chaotic experiences of my life. It was just, there were just like all over the walls were just pages and highlighted different colors, trying to keep everything organized. I mean, it was pretty wild. I just remember going in being like, okay, just say your lines, don't mess this up, get in, get out. And everyone was just exhausted. I mean, it was such a massive production that day. But it was really cool. I mean, everyone was really very nice. I met tons of people from all the shows, so that was great. But for the most part, I was just like, don't screw this up. It's actually my favorite scene from all the episodes that I did last season. I love that scene with Grant because it's seen it the first time I meet him and see him. And I just think there's something really special and magical about it.
Yeah. How did you audition for The Flash?
I didn't. I got asked to do it, which was really nice. Todd called me in, and he was our producer, and just said, hey, and pitched it to me, and I was like, yeah, great, sounds good. He pitched it in this really interesting way, and it sounded, I was like, oh my God, I get an opportunity to play the Flash's daughter. That's a huge deal. Oh, yeah. So yeah, I definitely said yes right away.
So how did you prepare for the role?
I mean, you know, I didn't really. I learned about XS and sort of a little bit of, you know, her history, but at the same time, I didn't want to do that too much because I know the television shows tend to change things from the comic books, which some fans like and some fans don't. So I just kind of went in with an idea of how I wanted her. They wrote her quite bubbly, so I kept her quite bubbly, and it worked out really well because people think that sort of that bubbly awkwardness is a lot like Barry's character, so that worked. That worked out.
So you're playing the mystery girl, which everybody found out at the end of the season. That you're Nora West Allen now, and you were revealed in the season finale. Were you aware what was going to happen to your character?
Yeah, I knew everything. I got cast about 5 or 6 months before I was even on the first show, so I knew everything, and it was this big secret that I had to keep. I mean, it was funny because I couldn't tell anybody, and when I got to set, I couldn't tell anybody, and there were still a few actors left that didn't know who I was. The costumes didn't know who I was, and makeup didn't know who I was, so everyone was really in the dark. I'm a horrible secret keeper. Well, I'm not a horrible secret keeper. I'm just a really bad liar, so people would try to guess what my character was, and I just kept with my eyes to the floor because I was so afraid I would give it away by smiling or giggling or doing something stupid.
Well, what do you expect from Nora Allen in the new season coming up?
I mean, there's not a lot I can tell you, but she, there's definitely a bit of a bumpy ride with the relationship between her and her mom. There's just something weird going on there, and that it gets sorted out fairly early in the season, but there's definitely a family dynamic that's just a little uncomfortable between the two of them. She's very much daddy's girl. She's totally obsessed with her father. He can do no wrong, and she just wants to be like him. She wants to be like him so badly. She wants to be this amazing speedster and get to be next to him during every single thing that he's doing. So that's the biggest part. She's just really, really, really keen, and she's really young spirited. She's in her 20s, but the character doesn't really feel like that in a lot of ways. She seems sort of like a little kid, which is a really nice thing. I like playing her that way. I like playing her sort of feeling a lot younger than she is.
Do you have a favorite scene that you were in with anybody in the Flash last year?
It really is that first scene I did with Grant. Okay. We had just met, and I just think it's so charming at the wedding. I think, I when I was younger, I had a dream where I met my mom as a young person in her 20s, and she was in this big walk-in closet, and I was helping her pick something to wear in the morning, and she had no idea I was her kid from the future, and it was just the neatest thing. And so when I played that role, when I played that scene at the wedding, there was just, in some weird way, I could relate to it because I had this dream about my mom, and it was so magical when that happened, and it really felt like that with Grant. It was like this, but it was a fine line. I remember the producers being like, okay, just be careful because it kind of looks like you're in love with him. So I had to just I was enamored with him, but it had to be for the right reasons, not for the wrong reasons. So yeah, I don't know, I like that one the best for sure.
Do you enjoy filming in Vancouver?
Yeah, and my mom lives there. It's a beautiful city. I mean, I have a 15-minute commute to work every morning, so in a way, it's really convenient. It's a really nice place. The weather is sort of all over the place. It's been really hot there recently, but it can be rainy, and the sun can go away for months at a time, which can be really terrible. But I mean, of all the places that I've shot, Vancouver, other than shooting in LA, which would be ideal, Vancouver is pretty close. It's only a 2.5-hour flight, so it's it's pretty convenient.
How many hours a day are you on set?
Probably 14 or
Wow.
so. Yeah, I'm a pretty. They're using me a lot, because it's a big deal to have Iris and Barry's kid around. So I'm pretty much in most scenes for these first few episodes, which is great. I sort of thought that working straight, that would make the days go faster, but it doesn't actually. The days are really, really long. But it's really fun. I mean, I'm having a great time. Everyone's super nice. Everyone's been really welcoming. Crafty's, fully stocked. So I snack a lot during the day, and it's great.
Did you enjoy going to the Comic-Con this year?
Yeah, I've been before many times, but this year was different. I mean, this is the first time I've been on a show that's attached to a comic book, and the sort of fandomonium is so much bigger. So there were, everyone for the most part is just screaming for Grant, but because he's the Flash, and he's the sort of the fulcrum of what the entire show is about. But yeah, it was nuts. It was completely crazy. It was a really fun, exhausting experience. But I don't know. I really like meeting fans. That's something I really enjoy doing. So I never find that too overwhelming. I find it to be a really nice experience.
Did you have a favorite moment that weekend?
Oh, that's a good question. Did I have a favorite moment that weekend? Yeah, actually, we went right before we did our signing. It was really towards the end of the day, and I've done signings at Comic Cons before, but never quite like what we did. And we're going through like the bowels of this building, and the security guards just opened this door, and all of a sudden there was like 100 screaming people as all of us walked in to go do our signing, and then we got to do the signing where like the cool, really big shows do their signing, which is sort of this round area, and the part that we stand on is like has this beautiful, pristine white carpet, and you're just in this big circle, and they're just kind of shuffling the fans through, and you have just a second to talk to them and sign their posters, and it was just unexpected, and it was really nice, and it was also the first time that day that I actually got to interact with the fans, which, like I said, is something that I actually really like doing. You know, we've just been doing these interviews all day, and interviews are fine, but you know, at Comic-Con you get asked the same questions over and over and over again, so it just sort of you know, we were just tired, and that was, for me, that was like a really refreshing moment at the con.
So you've been acting for years now. Who are like some of your influences in the acting world?
Oh my God, I have like an endless amount of. I mean, when I was younger, I'm still now, I'm obsessed with Cate Blanchett. I think she's extraordinary. I finally got to see her in New York. She was in a play with my really good friend Toby Schmitz, who was on Black Sails with me, and he's worked with Cate a bunch of times. She has a theater company in Australia. And anyways, they were doing a Chekhov play that came to New York, and I finally got to see her on stage, and that was such a incredibly special, extraordinary experience. And I got to see her up on stage next to like a really good friend of mine, which is really cool. And Sam Rockwell, I was like way back on the Sam Rockwell train before anyone else was on it, and just watching him do everything. I remember watching Moon a few years ago and being like, who is this guy? What is going on? Why is he so special? Why aren't more people talking about this person? Cut to like 10 years later, he wins an Oscar, which he, you know, so well deserved. He's just such an incredible actor. I'm enamored with him and with her for sure.
Is there somebody that you wish or you hope you can work with someday with?
There's tons of people. I just think like there's so many talented people right now. I want to work with so many different actors. I couldn't even start to begin a list. I mean, those two would be huge for me. If I got an opportunity to work with either of them, that would be ridiculous.
What do you think is your biggest achievement so far in the acting world?
I don't know. I never really, I guess that's something I should sort of think about. I think I'm the kind of person, and I think a lot of actors are, every time we book something or do something, it's a little bit hard to enjoy sometimes. We're thinking about, okay, but what's next, which is sort of how I'm always. So when I think of like achievements, I'm like, oh, achievements, I haven't yet achieved in a lot of ways, because I'm just constantly looking to like what my next project will be. I guess there's two, like Black Sails was a huge deal for me just because that was such a massive grand scale of television. It's like it's the most expensive or the second most expensive television show ever made, and I felt a tremendous amount of responsibility. I feel a lot of responsibility on The Flash as well, but in a kind of different way. So that was extraordinary, because I was playing a part that I was terrified to play, that on a daily basis I was like, oh my God, I don't know if I can play this person. Like this is hard, and this is difficult, and I don't know if I'm qualified for this. And yet every day I just did it. And then when I would, watch playback or watch an episode, I was like, oh yeah, I think I'm supposed to be a part of this cast. And that felt really special. And also I'm a part of this really amazing short form web series called I Love Becca and Lucy, which is one of those projects that sort of landed on my manager's desk, right, my former manager's desk, and was like absolutely no money, and they were like, you really don't have to do this, but just sending it along to you. And I just became obsessed with it and got a hold of the director and was like, listen, I want this part so badly, whether you give this to me or not. You just need to know that like I want to play this, I have to play this. And basically I begged for the role, and she was really great and guided me through the audition that I was going to be doing. Totally failed at the audition miserably, that miraculously ended up getting the part anyway. So that's something I'm just extremely, extremely proud of as well.
What do you think is the hardest role that you've played so far?
yeah, the hardest one I would, well, in a lot of ways, the hardest roles I've played are like the really shitty television movies that I've done that are like sci-fi related because the writing is so terrible, the story's so terrible, and it's really hard to do those and sound like a decent actor. And I think I'm pretty horrible in them too. I don't think I'm good at them at all. But I would say those are the most difficult because they're the most challenging in terms of like finding the reality in it or the groundedness in it, sounding like you're genuinely saying your dialogue. So for those are the hardest. But also Black Sails, just because it was a role I was really intimidated of. Like I said, I sort of didn't feel like I was like qualified to do it in a lot of ways. I was like, no, I need years of practice to do this. But it fit really well. It was one of those moments where you're like, no, you have to trust the producers. You know, they've cast you, and then the casting director, they've cast you for a reason. You know, and once I like fell into that character, it got incredibly comfortable.
Yeah. Do you have a dream role that you hope you could play someday?
I just want to be in dream indies. You know, this is like the time where indies are just shining. There's so many beautiful movies, and it's hard because like really big movie stars are starring in these indies now. And I just basically hope that I have an opportunity to be a part of really, really beautiful indies. I mean, I'm so much more interested in small films as opposed to like big budget, huge Hollywood movies, you know. I enjoy smaller independent film. As a viewer, I enjoy watching that more. So those are the kind of parts that I want to be a part of. I like playing really flawed characters. Because that's life, that's people, that's what we can all relate to. Nobody just floats through life, you know?
Yeah.
So for me, I just, you know, I'd like to play someone that's really, really dark and really doesn't have their shit together.
Yeah. So out of all the characters you've played, which one has been your favorite, you think?
I think I have a few, you know, they're my favorite for different reasons. Like I love playing Nora because she's awkward and bubbly, which I also am, you know, on The Flash. So that's really fun. It's not a massive challenge for me. I feel like I've kind of slipped into that character pretty easily and found her pretty quick. So that's really fun. You know, she's just a talkative little thing that kind of puts her foot in her mouth all the time. And there's something really that I relate to. So that's really fun. But I don't know. I mean, in terms of being on set and playing Max on Black Sails, I mean, that was like just the scale of that whole production was just really, really special. But then I like love the character that I play, and I live back in Lucy too. She's also like a ridiculous, kind of perverted, ridiculous young woman who is not apologetic about who she is at all in any way, and is incredibly in touch with her sexuality and her sort of childlike self at the same time. That's really fun. So I've been really lucky in the past few years to play parts that I feel really connected to and that I really enjoy playing.
Yeah. So we know that, you know, that the new season's coming up for The Flash. Is there any other upcoming projects you want the fans and the listeners to know about?
Oh, I mean, I'm hoping that we're going to do a second season of I Live Back on Lucy. That is very much the plan. If you haven't seen it, it's really worth a watch. It's about two mixed race girls, just sort of they're kind of in their late 20s, and it's just sort of about them. They live together, and they're just weirdos though. They're such weird girls, which I think a lot of girls can relate to. And in the age of like Instagram, when you know you're supposed to look and be and feel a certain way, it's a really refreshing, beautiful show. So we're supposed to have a second season of that. I have no idea when we're going to shoot that. I don't know when I'm going to have time to shoot that because the Flash's schedule is crazy, and I'm doing that for another 9 months. But yeah, that's the biggest thing. And you can check out the first season on YouTube. That's kind of where everyone's watching it right now.
And lastly, how can the listeners find you on social media?
Well, I'm on Twitter, but I literally never tweet. I retweet every once in a while, but that's at jparkerk. Instagram, I'm getting better at. I've been Instagramming a little bit more, and that's jparkerk3, which I'm told that I need to change and make that my full name, because that's what you're supposed to do. But for now, it's jparkerk3 is my Instagram, and that's the easiest way to follow me.
All right, I want to thank you for coming on. This was a blast. Let's get you back on after the season ends.
Yeah, definitely. I would love to. It was really nice chatting with you.
All right.